So you have to take into account that if someone, say, files for retirement at age 62 and they're the higher earner of the couple, when that person passes away, that not only reduce their retirement benefit, it will reduce the survivor benefit. So how important are Social Security benefits in people's estate planning? And nobody wants to think about that. You don't want to think about your mortality, but you need to. So when I file for benefits, how is that going to affect my spouse when I pass away? And if Social Security is a real important part of that, maybe I should delay as long as is possible for me. Doesn't necessarily mean wait till 70, but to maximize my benefit to me, which will also maximize the survivor benefit.
Thanks for coming in today, Jim. Welcome to the Money Alchemist podcast. I'm your host, Ben Jones. Today, we've got a topic that is relevant to nearly every American, and that is Social Security, which is a pretty complex program. It sounds simple, but it's actually not. And I know plenty of people out there that have made quite a few mistakes when dealing with their Social Security benefit and trying to understand what it is. So today I have with me to say that you're an expert of Social Security is probably a bit of an understatement. It's Jim Blair. He's vice president and co-founder of Premier Social Security Consulting. And Jim, you've had a long career with Social Security to boot. So tell us a little bit about your company, yourself, your journey, and tell us also all things about Social Security, because that's what we want to talk about today.
Well, sure. First of all, people might wonder why I know about Social Security. And just to give you an idea, I did work for the Social Security Administration for 35 years and did a number of jobs while I was there. Started off as a service representative. That's a smiling face people see when they walk in the front door. And they generally help people who've already applied. Maybe you're missing a check, you're having problems with your address, you're overpaid, all sorts of reasons. Moved into the claims taking part of it and took claims for retirement, survivors, disability, and health insurance. Did that for about 10 years, moved into the management end of it, and did a number of jobs there, but ended up spending the last 9 years as the district manager of the Piqua, Ohio office. Now people will go, where the heck is Piqua? And it's a small little rural community about 30 miles north of Dayton. But the point with that being, wherever you are, there's a Social Security office fairly close. It's probably the most accessible government office out there. After 35 years, I did retire, and you have to have something to do. My plan was just go fishing, but you can't fish every day. Well, I guess you could, but I met up with my business partner, Mark Kiner, and we established Premier Social Security Consulting. And in the beginning, our sole purpose of that company was to meet with people, mainly couples, but anyone looking to file for Social Security. And we were going to go over the different filing options they had and answer their questions. After about 3 years, we evolved into a training company. We still do the consulting. We still meet with people. I like that. You get to talk to folks and talk to them about their Social Security. But we also train financial advisors, CPAs, insurance agents about Social Security, because if somebody deals with money, generally speaking, the public thinks they know everything about money, anything to do with money, and they're going to ask questions. And whether or not the people come away with answers to the questions or not, they know where to get the answers if they don't have it themselves. So it's an important business, I think, from both perspectives. One, we're helping people, and two, we're helping the advisors be more proactive with Social Security.
That's how I met you. Yeah, and
Right.
I find it to be very valuable. It's impossible to be an expert at all things finance because it's such a broad topic, and that's why you have consultants such as yourself that are more focused on one area. Then you have CPAs that are focused on taxes. You got money managers, CFAs that just manage money. So it's it's a very compartmentalized business. And then you have people like me that kind of be like a jack of all trades. And when I need to dive deep into a topic, I bring in, Jim Blair or Mark Kiner with, with all your expertise and background and knowledge. One thing you caught my attention though, people would actually get overpaid by Social Security and they would come in to address that issue.
Yes, it happens because if you file for benefits before your full retirement age and you still work, you can become overpaid. A lot of people on disability go back to work. Maybe forget to mention that to the Social Security Administration.
Oh yeah,
they become overpaid.
I'm sure they forget air quotes being used here.
That's right. And there's ways that other people do things that are on the same record that you're on that could cause you to become overpaid. So those were not fun conversations to have with people, but we did want to make sure they knew what their rights were and what options they had.
So I guess that Social Security would find out through an internal audit, and you would send a letter to the recipient, or would it be a letter or a phone call and say, hey, you need to come in and give us the money back?
It would be a letter that would say, we paid you $10,000 more than we should have, and we'd like you to pay that back in the next 30 days. Nobody wants to get a that from the government that says, hey, we overpaid you and we want our money back.
Yeah. Sorry to sidetrack on that, but one question I wanted to start out with is just kind of to give everybody a brief overview of Social Security, because there's, I find a lot of people don't really realize why the program was established and how it was established. Some might think that it's just always been part of being an American, which isn't the case. So do you remember when Social Security was established? I mean, not you personally, but remember the day reading. I don't think anybody was around. Well, obviously some people were, but it was founded quite a long time ago. But do you remember the date?
Yeah, it was actually the actual date the law was passed, the Social Security Act, was August 14th, 1935. So we're not quite there yet, but it's almost 90 years old.
Yes.
Will be next year. So what the reason for the Social Security Act was our senior citizens were living in poverty. Before the Social Security Act passed, over half of our seniors had income under the poverty level. Even though it never was meant to be someone's sole source of income in retirement, it is for a lot of people. And the poverty rate for seniors now is less than 9.5%, even though a lot of them, Social Security is their only source of income. So it's a real important program. People were living, it was right after the Depression. And so people were living in poverty, and they tried to do this to solve that problem. And it's a real important program.
Oh yeah, it definitely in my line of work, it's critical. Do you happen to know what percentage of retirees live just off Social Security?
It's about 40% of the folks that are receiving benefits.
Yeah, that's so. Without that, we would have big issues.
Oh, huge issues.
Yeah, grandma would be eating cat food,
or they would be on other types of programs. So this program, believe it or not, it's self-contained. The benefits that are paid come from people that work, and they pay the Social Security tax. They even administer the program with those funds.
Yeah.
So if people were not receiving Social Security, they'd be on other sources of government assistance, food stamps, and some may still be, but a lot of people aren't that would be.
That's assuming those laws existed. I'd imagine if Social Security wasn't passed, we probably wouldn't have all these other social programs that were added later, I would think. So do you happen to know who the first beneficiary was?
Yeah, when Social Security first started, it was just a one-time payment. You retired and they gave you some money.
It's just a lump sum of check? Just a lump sum of money?
Lump sum of money. And the first person to receive a benefit, it took a couple of years. It was 1937, but a fellow named Ernest Ackerman, he worked one day under the program, paid in a nickel, and he got back a whopping 17 cents. Not sure how far 17 cents went in 1937, probably further than it does today.
I'd imagine.
But still, I can't imagine that being something to live off of. Now, by 1940, then they realized this isn't such a good idea. We need to make this a monthly benefit.
Because otherwise people would just go out and blow it.
Right.
Yeah.
And so a lot of folks have heard of a woman, Ida Mae Fuller. And it's funny, I used to joke and say she received the first check because it was check number one. Well, I was reading up on item A, and it really was. The check number was a bunch of zeros with the number 1 at the end. So she received the first monthly benefit payment. And what item A did that was unheard of back in that point at that time was she lived to be 100 years old, and she received benefits from starting with age 65 up to 100 because it's a lifetime benefit. So it's real important. I don't know if everybody will get that type of return on their investment, but she did really well. But
no doubt.
Starting in 1940, Social Security has been a monthly benefit payment.
Yeah. So they call the trust fund that funds the Social Security the Old Age and Survivors Trust, and the idea behind that name, or the implication of that name, is that it's meant as an old age insurance program.
Right.
So is that correct? That this was never really meant to be a retirement plan so much as it was insurance that you were going to get too old, live past your welcome date.
Yeah. Well, yeah. I mean, people were going at the time that Social Security passed.
Mm-hmm.
You had to be age 65 to receive it.
Yeah.
Now the odd thing was the average life expectancy wasn't age 65.
Yes.
So the thought back then was, and the fear, will I live long enough to collect it?
Yeah.
Now the fear is, will I outlive my retirement savings when I retire?
Yeah.
And you can't outlive your Social Security. So that's a good thing.
Yes, it is. So we touch on an important point, and that is, how long are we going to live? But what about how long Social Security is going to live? Because I get a lot of questions from people that say Social Security is going to run out of money. I've heard dates tossed around from 2033 to 2035. So let's just call it a decade. We'll split the difference and say in a decade, Social Security is out of money. What does that mean? One, so when Social Security runs out of money, does that mean benefits are gone, or does that mean they're reduced? And is there anything to prevent that from happening? I guess we'll start on the first part of that question. So what does it mean?
What it means is that in 2033 to 2035, whenever that day is, the surplus that the Social Security Administration currently has will be gone. It's a program that depends on people working and paying in the Social Security tax.
Mm-hmm.
That's what they use to pay benefits. Well, right now they're bringing in less money than they owe. So the Social Security Administration does have a surplus. They have around $2.8 trillion in U.S. Treasury bonds. Well, we know that those Treasury bonds are good because they've been cashing them in for the last 3 years. At one point, they were at $2.9 trillion. And by about 2033, 34 or so, that surplus will be gone. So what will happen is, under the current law, Social Security cannot operate in the red. That means they can only pay out what they bring in. Well, people are still going to be working. They're still going to have money coming in. So it's not going away. It doesn't just end when that money runs out. But it means everybody receiving a benefit is going to receive roughly a 20% pay cut.
Okay.
So I guess the good news is you'll still get 80% of your benefit, but the bad news is 20% of it won't be received because they just won't have the money to pay out. They're not going to let that happen, but under current law, that's the way it's set to be. So people still work. You still pay the Social Security tax. That money will still come in. It's just not enough to cover it all.
And the reason why this is running out of money, I suspect, is because it's paid for. It's not, you don't pay ahead for your benefits like you would like Medicare Part A. Or I'm wrong on that. Medicare Part A is funded by existing workers, correct? But anyway, I digress. The current crop of workers is paying for yesterday's retirees.
Right.
Yeah.
And when Social Security first started, we had 160 workers for each retiree.
Yeah.
So it wasn't an issue.
Mm-hmm.
Well, currently that's about 2.8 workers to each retiree.
Yeah.
They think over time that'll eventually drop to 2 to 1. So you can see there might be a little bit of a funding problem.
Yes. And the solutions you see are either they're going to raise Social Security taxes on current workers or possibly change that rule where Social Security can be funded through other sources. So, or operate in the red, operate at a deficit. Are right now, is the only source of funding from Social Security through the FICA taxation, or are there any other ways Social Security can receive funding?
That's the main source of funding is
Mhm.
the FICA tax. A little bit of funding comes in. Nobody wants to pay Social Security tax on their or income tax on their Social Security benefit.
Mhm.
But the good news off of that is whatever tax is paid on your Social Security benefit goes to the Social Security Administration. So IRS gives the Social Security Administration credit for that income tax. It's not a whole lot. Maybe I think the last time I looked at it, it was around 37 billion dollars. So, in Washington speak, $37 billion isn't all that much. And it's $1 trillion program.
Yeah.
So, but it's still a little bit of money coming in. Right now, there's interest on that Treasury bond that Social Security has, but eventually that'll be gone. So mainly it's the FICA tax.
So, do you suspect that Congress, if you were a betting person, I know you can't predict the future, so this is just speculation here, but do you suspect that Congress will pass a law that increases taxes or allows the Treasury to inject money directly into the Social Security trust fund like it does any other spending program? Or do you think it'll be a mixture of both, or something that I don't even haven't even thought about?
Yeah, I don't think they're going to, this is my personal opinion. I don't think they'll raise the tax rate because that affects everybody,
Mm-hmm.
not only the higher earners, but also the lower earners.
Mm-hmm.
I think what they're looking at, and there are proposals out there, you can find those through the Social Security website, ssa.gov. The thing that I see coming up all the time is they're going to raise the full retirement age.
Mm-hmm.
Full retirement age currently for people born in 1960 or later is age 67. At some point, that's going to go to age 70.
Yeah.
They're also going to raise the amount of money you pay Social Security tax on. Currently, you stop paying that FICA tax, or at least the Social Security portion of it, if you earn over $168,600. They're going to raise that. Some talk about raising it to about 250,000. Some talk of saying, okay, we'll still cap it at 168.6, but if your income is over 400,000, it kicks back in again. So they're going to tax the higher earners. Along with that, they'll do a little bit of means testing, changing how the higher earners' benefits are computed. So the lower earners will still receive benefits based under current law. The higher earners will still get something, but a little bit less.
Mm-hmm.
And they believe that those two things alone will take care of almost the entire deficit that they're looking at for the next 75 years. Congress is not going to let people get a 20% pay cut.
I doubt it. That'd
No.
be political suicide.
Yeah. Are you going to vote for somebody that gives you a 20% pay cut? I know I'm not.
Yeah. I can't say I'm excited about the age 70 retirement, but I mean, it does make sense because people are living longer, and you want the program to be viable long term. And I imagine they would still allow an early retirement filing age, because the way the as I understand it, and you can clarify this if I'm wrong, the way the early retirement filing age works is that it discounts for every month you file early, and there's 2 stages of discounting that take place. It's like one is 5/12 for every month, and then another one is was it 2/3 for every month? There's a formula, I don't have it memorized, but
yeah, 5/9 of 1%
5/9
for the first 36 months of reduction, and then
That's it.
5/12 after that.
Okay, yes. So thank you for clarifying that. So, it's good to hear though that there are viable solutions on the table, and we just probably need to wait for Congress to do its typical thing, which is wait to the final hour and then make a decision last minute, because they're probably going to make that decision in combination with 1,000 other decisions.
Right.
and some sort of massive omnibus spending bill. But that's a discussion for another time. We want to stay on the Social Security topic. So what are all the Social Security programs that exist? As I understand it, you got the standard Social Security, but I always hear there's widows benefits, there's death benefits, there's disability. I hear about disability. Heck, you can't drive down 75 South without seeing 15 different signs from attorneys all wanting you to file disability through their services. So what are all the different programs and how are they different from one another?
Well, certainly the largest one is retirement.
Mm-hmm.
A little over 70% of the benefits Social Security pays out are retirement benefits. That's for people who've reached age 62 and at some point, and currently between 62 and 70 is where everybody's going to decide, when do I want to start my retirement benefit? That is the biggest one. Disability is the next biggest one. It varies from year to year, but it's right around 13% of the benefits they pay out go to disability payments. That's for folks under their full retirement age who are unable to work and earn what Social Security calls SGA, substantial gainful activity. Now, it doesn't have to be a permanent disability. It has to be expected to last at least 12 months or more,
Mm-hmm.
or result in death. I guess that would be permanent. But,
Yeah.
12 months or more, then you can draw a Social Security disability benefit. Those benefits end at your full retirement age. Doesn't mean you don't receive money anymore. It's just converted to retirement. Benefits the same, paydays the same. Those folks don't even notice anything, but it's instead of disability, it's retirement. You mentioned survivor benefits, widows, widowers, surviving divorced spouse. They receive a little over 6% of the benefits.
I like how you put that, surviving divorced spouse.
Yeah.
I guess what you were saying is that your spouse that divorced passed away.
Right.
Yeah. But you can also survive a divorced spouse that's still living.
Yeah. Well, that's true.
Yeah. Anyway.
But they receive about 6% of the benefits.
Mm-hmm.
Children, minor children, a child between 18 and 19, if they're still in high school. And what we see probably with retirement benefits more often would be a child who's disabled. And if that child becomes disabled before age 22, they can draw off of a parent's benefit off of their work record when the parent files for, say, retirement.
Mm-hmm.
So that's another 6%. And then, believe it or not, spousal benefits are payable, but it's a real low percentage, a little over 3%. But that only counts people who are eligible only for a spousal benefit. Most people now work, pay into Social Security, and they're eligible.
And they take the higher of
benefit.
their benefit or the spousal benefit. And most of the time, it's their benefit.
Well, you have to take your own first, and you may get a spousal boost on top of that.
Oh, I see what you're saying.
Yeah.
Gotcha.
And so they're counted in the retired workers.
Yeah.
But those are the benefits that are paid through the Social Security Administration. Mm-hmm. It affects a lot of people. Now, there are other things that affect the benefit payments, but that's when you would want to contact Social Security to see, am I eligible for retirement or disability if you become unable to work, that type of thing.
Now, the disability benefit, I find somewhat confusing when you're younger. So, well, first off, like if one thing I wanted to cover is if you have a spouse that dies that qualify for Social Security and you take care of a child, you can get you can get a widower's benefit for both you and your child, but only up to age 16, right? Once your child's 16, why 16? Why not till 18? I find that kind of bizarre.
Yeah, it's just when they pass a law, they determine at that point.
I guess because this is how antiquated this law is. Because back then it was common for 16-year-olds to have kids and start a family.
Yeah, yeah.
Nowadays you can't get them off Minecraft or Fortnite, let alone expect them to have a child. That's just it's just a relic from the past, I guess. But back to the disability. Let's say you're age 23 and you fall off a ladder and you're paralyzed from the waist down. I mean, I would consider that to be a pretty long-term disability. How do you qualify for that? Because you obviously don't have your 10 credits or your, what is it? Is it called credits? Is that what they call it? 40 credits.
Credits or quarters of coverage.
Yeah. So how would that person qualify for disability? And would they?
Well, they would, and they need less work.
Mm-hmm.
The 40 credits that people need, that's for retirement.
Okay.
Disability has what's called a current work connection.
Mm-hmm.
And so most of the time you have to have worked 5 out of the last 10 years. But for your example, it's not likely a 23-year-old has 5 years of work.
Correct.
And so what they'll look at a minimum, they need 6 credits, which is basically a year and a half of work.
Okay.
And then they would use a minimum of 2 years to compute the benefit.
So what if he fell off the ladder at a year and 5 months? Is he just not going to get anything?
If he doesn't have the 6 credits, then there would be no Social Security disability payable.
Wow.
Might be eligible for another disability program called SSI, Supplemental Security Income. That's a needs-based program. It's administered through the Social Security Administration, but it's not part of the Social Security Trust Fund.
Okay. So thanks for clarifying that. I always find the disability component of Social Security to be the most confusing. And that's saying a lot because Social Security itself can be pretty confusing. So is it possible to have qualified for Social Security, but then lose your benefits somehow?
There are a couple things that you don't lose entitlement to those benefits, but they will reduce the amount paid to you. For instance, if someone works for a job where you don't pay Social Security tax, and there's a few out there, they generally are government type of jobs. The old federal civil service program, or a lot of states, your teachers, your police, your firemen, they were able to opt out of Social Security. They have their own pension plan. Well, because they have this plan, this benefit from work not covered by Social Security, they're subject to a couple of provisions. One is called windfall elimination provision.
Mm-hmm.
That affects you if you also have 40 credits under Social Security covered employment. They're going to change how your benefits are computed. There's one called government pension offset, and that affects spousal benefits and survivor benefits and divorced spouse benefits. If you're, say, a state teacher, particularly in Ohio, for example, 97% of our state, local, and county employees don't pay into Social Security.
Mm-hmm.
So if we have a spouse that's eligible for the spousal benefit, but also receives a state teacher pension, 2/3 of their state teacher pension is subtracted from the spousal benefit. And oftentimes that means they won't receive anything.
Yeah, because those benefits can be pretty large sometimes. Sometimes a lot of times larger than the Social Security benefits. Yeah. So how are these benefits paid typically? Are they most of the time I see it monthly?
It is a monthly benefit.
Mm-hmm.
They're always paid a month behind. They want to make sure you survive the entire month before they pay you. So if someone receives a benefit, say in the month of June,
mm-hmm.
they receive their payment, goes into their bank account. That is their May benefit. And they had to survive the entire month of May for that benefit to be payable.
What if they don't survive?
Then it needs to be returned. And now usually what will happen, and what I tell people, just leave it alone. Leave it in the account. Don't close out the account yet. Treasury, when they discover the person passed away, will come back and take that money out of the account. That way you're even. If somebody closed out the account and took the money out, then they'll receive one of those overpayment notices we talked about
and then
before.
They have to come in and see your successor.
Right. Now, it gets a little confusing if you do survive the entire
mm-hmm.
month, but someone passes away before they receive their benefit. Because some people, based on their day of birth, don't receive their Social Security payment until the 4th Wednesday of the month.
Mm-hmm.
Well, maybe they pass away earlier in the month.
Like the 2nd or the 3rd or something. Yeah.
Technically, that payment is due, but Treasury will still take it back. And then the survivors will have to file a form with the Social Security Administration. It's normally payable to a surviving spouse first, no surviving spouse to any children. And if there's no children, it'll go to the estate. So it gets a little confusing.
Yeah, it does. And let's get even more confusing here. So let's dive a little further deeper because I want to know what happens if you die. Like if I think I have my 40 credits, but what if I die before I hit my filing age, which based on our discussion sounds like it's going to be age 70.
Yeah.
But what happens if I die?
Well, there may be someone who could receive a benefit if you
mm-hmm.
have a surviving spouse.
Mm-hmm.
When they reach age right now, age 60, you can file for widows or widowers benefit. So there would be benefits payable to your surviving spouse.
Even though she's not age 67, even though she's not.
Right. It's reduced.
Okay.
Over 67, she would receive 100% of your benefit. At 60, it's reduced about 28.5%. So it's reduced, but she could receive it as early as age 60.
Okay.
If you have minor children, they would draw benefits, or if you have a disabled child.
But my wife wouldn't. So she would get Social Security benefits for my kids up until age 16. So once they hit their 16th birthday, it's gone.
Well, the children will receive till they're 18. Okay. Your wife can receive they're called young mothers, young fathers benefits.
Yes.
Also known as child and care benefits. In a death case, if the surviving spouse has a child of the deceased in their care and they're under age 16, or if they're over age 16, if they're severely disabled, then that spouse can draw at any age. So maybe you have a 10-year-old and a 40-year-old spouse, and that the person passes away, the child's eligible, so is the surviving spouse. When the child reaches 16, the spouse's benefit stops. Child continues to age.
Now, what if you don't know this? So what if someone listening here had a spouse pass away that qualified for Social Security, and they took care of, 2 or 3 children, or even one? I guess the number doesn't matter. And the spouse passed away when the kids were, 9 and 10, and they didn't know. And 6-7 years go by, and now they're over age 7. Do they just lose that benefit altogether, or is there any way to retroactively go back and get that benefit?
For those benefits, you could go back as much as 12 months, and that's it.
That's it.
Yeah. Usually what happens, and this is a good thing, the funeral directors will tell the surviving spouse, you need to contact Social Security. There's a lump sum death benefit. It's not much. It's $255. That's the maximum amount.
Well, pays for half of a trip to Costco.
Yeah, almost. And so because of that, the funeral directors will say, contact Social Security and file for that benefit. And then Social Security will ask the question if there's any children to see if they will look to see if there's any benefits payable to anybody. It is possible someone may miss out on the benefits. It usually doesn't happen because somebody's going to tell that person, you need to contact Social Security. Enough people know. But I guess there is a potential for it, and that's unfortunate. But from my experience,
you don't see it a lot
very often.
Yeah. Well, what are some other common mistakes that you see? I imagine in your career, you've seen a lot of mistakes made. Like one that I encountered was a spouse who lost her spouse, but she did not increase her benefit. So when she lost her spouse, well, first she made 2 mistakes. First, she took her benefit and not her spousal benefit, and her benefit was less than 50% of her spousal benefit. Somehow that escaped Social Security Administration, when they filed, they didn't catch that. But in addition to that, when he passed away, she did not step up her benefit to her late husband's benefit. Now, I didn't encounter this until well after this had happened, but I have seen that happen. That's one mistake that I've seen. But what are some of the most common mistakes that you see?
Well, not even taking into consideration the effect of you filing early will have on a survivor benefit. When I was taking claims, one of the things that I would see that really it upset me the most, you would have a couple, they would file for benefits and their income would be fine. And then one would pass away and you would talk to the surviving spouse and they would file for their survivor benefits. And you would tell them how much that was going to be. And they would look at you and go, that's not enough money. And the problem is when somebody dies, you lose their income and it doesn't mean your bills are cut in half.
Yeah.
So you have to take into account that if someone, say, files for retirement at age 62 and they're the higher earner of the couple, when that person passes away, that not only reduce their retirement benefit, it will reduce the survivor benefit.
Yeah.
So how important are Social Security benefits? in people's estate planning. And nobody wants to think about that. You don't want to think about your mortality, but you need to. So when I file for benefits, how is that going to affect my spouse when I pass away? And if Social Security is a real important part of that, maybe I should delay as long as is possible for me. Doesn't necessarily mean wait till 70, but to maximize my benefit to me, which will also maximize the survivor. That's a big one. Another filing mistake people make is they go ahead and file before their full retirement age, but they still want to work because there's what's called an earnings test. And if you're under your full retirement age, and if you earn over a certain amount of money, and it's not a whole lot, this year's $22,320. If you go over that, they're going to hold back $1 of your benefits for every $2 you go over. So you could lose your benefits in that respect. So not only is your benefit reduced, but they're going to hold some of it back.
Do you get that back? So let's say you do make that mistake and you file early while you're still employed, and you have your whole Social Security check reduced to zero. Where does that money go? Is that just given back to Social Security, or does that get credited back to, your account, if you want to call it that?
They do credit it back. You don't get it in a lump sum. So when you reach full retirement age, they don't go back and say, oh, we withheld all your benefits. Here's your money. But what they'll do, keep in mind, you filed 62, your benefits are reduced for age. If your full retirement age is 67 and you file at 62, your benefit is reduced 30%.
Yes.
That's based on the number of months you file before your full retirement age. So what Social Security does is at full retirement age, they'll go back and look, and they call these credit months. Any month you did not receive a Social Security benefit because of your earnings, they'll credit that. And when you reach full retirement age, they'll adjust that reduction factor. So you filed at 62, you took a 30% reduction, but because of your earnings, maybe you only receive 6 checks a year.
Yeah.
So at age 67, they'll look at that and say, okay, we reduced you 60 months because you filed 60 months early, but we only paid you 30 months of benefit. They would change that reduction factor from 60 to 30. Now, instead of your benefit being reduced 30%, it'd be reduced about, say, 15%.
Okay.
So you do get an increase. That's a permanent increase for the rest of your life. So over time, you get it back if you live long enough.
But it's generally, in your opinion, it's better just to wait till when you're fully retired. So if you're going to file early, it's probably best to make sure you need the money, and now you're not going to work part-time.
Yeah, I'm not a big fan of filing at 62, although there are circumstances.
Let's talk about that, because that's actually my next question. Is like, what, in your opinion, what is the ideal age to file Social Security? Because I get that question all the time, and I tell everybody, well, you'll know what the ideal age is when you die.
Yeah, that is true. I like full retirement age. That's when you receive 100% of your benefit. If you file early, it's reduced. And your break-even point of filing, say, at 62 versus full retirement age, takes about 12 years.
Yeah.
So depends on your full retirement age, but somewhere between 78 and 79, you receive the same amount of money from Social Security, whether you file at 62 or you waited till 67. At that point, now you're losing money. Well, the average survival rate for a male in his 60s is 84. A female is 87. Social Security tells us half of those folks are going to live to their upper 80s, early 90s. Quarter of those folks are going to live to 95 or older.
Yeah.
So if you filed at 62, you're probably going to lose money. Who wants you to file 62? The government does. Does the government want you to do things that's in your favor or their favor? So I like full retirement age. Now, 70 does get you more money, but also that break-even point is also about 12 and a half years. So 82 and a half, you break even.
Yeah,
that one's a little tougher. But if you were talking about survivor benefits, if your spouse is going to step into your shoes, if you wait till 70 and increase your benefit, that also increases the survivor benefit.
There's also the qualitative perspective, because there's a quality of life curve.
Yep.
So you have better quality of life the younger you are.
Right.
So you kind of want money then. So that money, getting that extra money in those first 3 years from 67 to 70, I imagine is more valuable than that little bit of extra money you get. It actually could be a lot of extra money that you get from, 80 2 to 85, so to speak, whatever that break even is.
Yeah, and so is it worth waiting those 3 years to get the higher benefit? If you're working, you don't need the money. It's not a bad thing to wait, and you don't have. It's not 67 or 70. You just wait until you stop.
Yes,
work.
I've advised several clients to wait till 70 because they just don't need the money, and it actually hurts them from a tax perspective because they'll have unneeded income, and it's better for a spouse to wait because you're also playing that game where the spousal, but you get the higher of the spousal benefit. So correct me if I'm wrong, but let's say, you've got I'm gonna use your name, Jim and Betsy, and Betsy files her benefit at 67 and it's $2,000 a month, and then Jim waits till 70 and his is $3,800 a month as a result. If Jim dies first, doesn't Betsy get the $3,800?
Right.
Yes.
So she would get the higher benefit.
Yeah. So it's a way to leverage. It's basically like getting a life insurance policy, a small one, to help out with that. So and it reduces overall taxes, and there's the chance that neither of them die early. They live their full life expectancy, and then they both hit that break even point.
Right.
Well, that's good. You and I are very much in alignment on this opinion. I get a lot. It's shocking to me how many people come my way, and their opinion is I'm going to file as early as possible because their assumption is that Social Security is going bust, and they want to get their money before it's too late. And that's one angle. The other angle is inflation is going to dilute the purchasing power. Now, this is less common, but it's going to dilute purchasing power to nothing. So I'm going to get dollars ahead of the Cantillon effect, so to speak, and try to invest that. Now, I'm going to tell you right now, not a single client or person that's discussed that strategy with me has come back to invest their Social Security money.
Right.
Not a single person. They find a way to spend it.
It's good in theory.
Yeah, but I don't see anybody doing it. But it always shocks me how many people think they just conclude file it early. That's what they want to do, and I tend to discourage that. So, now one thing I wanted to hit on before we move off of filing mistakes is back. When was it? Like 2014? You heard there was this like creative thing you could do, like file and suspend restricted application. Now you and I were talking off air here, and you were telling me these strategies are gone. But tell me a little bit about what you used to be able to leverage spousal benefits in order to increase your own benefit, and sometimes people come to me thinking that you can still do that. And there's a lot of financial advisors out there that think you can still do that. So what was that, and why is it gone?
Yeah, two programs called Claim and Suspend.
Mm-hmm.
What that meant was you reached full retirement age and you filed an application for retirement benefits, but you told Social Security not to pay you. And the reason you did that, it allowed anyone who was eligible on your work record to receive their benefits. So your spouse could receive a spousal benefit.
Mm.
If you had children eligible, they could receive their benefit, but you still earned those delayed retirement credits. And at age 70, your benefit was still increased. At the time, that was a 32% increase. But in the meantime, your spouse and kids received their benefits. Well, they changed the law. You can still claim and suspend, but if you suspend your benefits, you suspend everybody's benefits on your work record. So it took away the advantage of the claim and suspend.
Mm-hmm.
Not only did you suspend your benefits, but you suspended your spouse's benefit.
Gotcha.
Or the children drawing on your work record. So there's no advantage to that. The other was called a restricted application. And if your spouse received benefits, or maybe they claim and suspend it,
Mm-hmm.
but they established their record, instead of filing for your own Social Security, you filed for spousal benefits only.
Mm.
And that allowed your benefits, again, to grow for those delayed retirement credits. And at 70, you would drop the spousal benefits, switch to your own, and you would receive that increase. Well, what it did was it knocked that. We talked about the break-even point being 12 and a half years. Sometimes the break-even point was zero,
Mm-hmm.
0 months to get your money back. But they did away with that. That was the most recent one. You had to be born by January 1st of 1954 to be able to take advantage of the restricted application. Anybody born by that date is already age 70. So
Yeah.
that's
So the gravy train
strategy's
is
gone.
full stop. Everybody off.
Yeah.
Nobody
it's
can give
gone.
up. The engine's broke down.
It is broke down and hauled off to the junkyard. So.
Yeah. Well, that's unfortunate. Now, what I would imagine the reason they shut that off is because obviously they're just trying to sustain Social Security, and it was a way for people to get increased benefits without paying into the program a commiserate amount. So it was a sneaky little trick that people would do. I actually was able to execute it for a few clients back in the day, and it always made you feel super smart when you put that into a financial plan.
Yeah.
So it's unfortunate that I can't do it anymore, but I did want you to explain what it was, and also the fact that it wasn't available anymore. So and the silver lining in that is it just makes filing Social Security a little simpler, I think. So now that I'm on that, filing Social Security, how do people do it? When should they be thinking about that in terms of like not their age? We already talked about that, but like when they've determined the age that they want to file, when should they be filing? Should it be 6 months in advance, 3 months in advance, 12 months after?
Well, first of all, what people need to do regardless, if you're 18 or older, go on SSA.gov and create their online account.
Okay.
They don't mail your benefit statement out to you anymore. And you want to make sure that your earnings are posted on your record correctly. It also give you an idea of what your benefits will be in retirement. And I know an 18-year-old could care less about what their retirement's going to be, but it does get here.
Yeah.
I was 18 once.
Yes.
So a long, long time ago. Yeah. But create that account so you can just make sure that Social Security's putting your wages and your information on your record correctly. For folks when they're getting ready and thinking about retirement, always make a plan. We plan for weddings, we plan for vacations. Who knows? We even plan for our divorces. But Social Security, you're going to receive the rest of your life. Mm-hmm. Make that plan. You don't necessarily need to do it too early. 60 or older is a good point to start thinking about it, because you can file at 62. Do you want to? You may want to. Some people may want to. Most people don't. But you want to look at it at that point and start looking ahead as to what your benefits are going to be. And at that point, it's a pretty good indication. You'll know what your benefits are going to be pretty close. It may not be exact, but it'll be real close. As far as filing for your benefits, you can file online through the Social Security Administration, or you can call them up and make an appointment for them to call you or for you to go into the local office.
Yeah, you can drive to Piqua.
You can drive to Piqua. They have the best people in Piqua, I can tell you that. But if you go there and tell them I sent you, I'll get all kinds of hate mail from them. But it's a good little office, but you can file up to 4 months in advance.
Okay.
Now, Social Security says it takes us 60 days to process your claim.
Oh, okay.
And remember, they're always a month behind anyway. I would say even file a little bit more in advance. If you know when you're going to retire, go ahead and file that application, get it set up. That way it's ready to go and you're not behind.
Yes.
If you're under full retirement age, there's no retroactivity of benefits. They will not begin your benefits any earlier than the month that you file. So you want to file in advance, but it's possible if someone wanted to file, say, by the end of June, they could file June 30th and still start in June. Their first check will be late, more than likely. Mm-hmm. And so to get your check on time, at least 2 months in advance, but I would say a little earlier than that.
And you mentioned filing online. So is that the best way to file in your opinion, or would you suggest doing it over the phone or in person? I guess the reason why I ask is because if you file online, you're probably not getting a lot of consulting feedback. So one of the benefits you could probably get is when you file on the phone or in person is you get some, I guess the overall question is, what is the experience like in person or over the phone? Do you get any consulting from Social Security when you talk to them, or They're just there to take orders from you.
Pretty much they will just take your application. Now they will tell you if you're eligible for other benefits that you need to apply for.
Okay.
But they'll do that anyway. So if you file your application online for a retirement benefit and the Social Security representative processes it, they'll look at your application. If they see that there may be a spousal benefit or maybe you have a deceased spouse in your past, something along those lines, they'll contact the people and get those questions answered to see, to make sure, one, that's exactly what you want to do, and two, you're filing for the right benefit at the right time. So I like filing online because you can do it whenever. It's 24/7. You can get online and do your application. Some benefits you cannot file online: widows and widowers benefits, children's benefits. You have to do.
What about
with the Social Security Administration.
Filing on your ex-spouse's benefit? Because I imagine that's something you probably have to do in person or over the phone, because you don't know. A lot of folks who I work with who have an ex-spouse, where they're most likely going to file on that person's earnings record. They have no idea what their record is. They don't. They may not have their social. They certainly don't have their benefits information. So what does someone do in that situation?
Well, first of all, if you're eligible on your own, you have to take that first anyway. But if you don't know your ex's Social Security number, then you would need to file through the Social Security office, because they're going to ask you some questions and try to find the number.
You could do that after the fact. So you could file online and then call back in with that request.
Or they will call you. So they will look at it and see, okay, this person's filing for retirement, but they have an ex-spouse and they were married long enough to that individual.
And they have Social Security has record of that.
They would see from your application, because they ask you, are you married?
Gotcha.
They'll ask about your current marriage, but they also, have you had any other marriages? And if it lasted 10 years or more or ended in your former spouse's death, then they ask you information about that marriage.
Okay. So is it difficult to get an appointment with Social Security or to call them on the phone? So, if you wanted to, I know I've had to call the IRS a few times, and you have to call in, the earlier the better. But if you call in the middle of the day, I mean, you could be on hold for hours sometimes. Is that the typical experience of Social Security as well, or do you find it to be a little bit more streamlined?
It can be a long wait. There are instances where you have up to an hour wait. The 800 number is open from 7 a.m. to 7 p.m.
Yeah.
And I always advise people, if you're going to call, try to call early or closer to the 7 p.m. But if you can call early, especially folks in the Eastern time zone, because other people are still asleep.
Yeah, everybody's waking up at 10 a.m. when they're retired.
That's right. So just make sure maybe you've got something to do, put your phone on speaker, and you can work on your computer stuff or play games or whatever it is you want to do. And when they come on, they'll tell you. They do give you the option in many cases where they'll say, leave your number and we'll call you back.
Okay. I don't trust those. I don't.
My credit union does a great job with that, but other places don't. You leave your number and you never hear from them.
I'm like, nope, I'm staying right here. Nobody's cutting in front of me. That's just my personality, though.
Yeah. So, if you got a call, just have some patience. And when the person answers the phone, don't be too upset with them.
Yeah.
I'll tell you from just my experience, I was much more helpful to people that weren't yelling at me than I was to people that were yelling at me. So you still help them, but you may not go that extra step. That's just human nature.
Yeah.
And I will say that I think, this is my opinion, but I think the people at the Social Security Administration are the hardest working people in the federal government, and they want to do a good job. They want to make sure people get what benefits that they're entitled to. But, just human nature, don't make them mad. Because, it's not their fault.
They say don't bite the hand that feeds you.
That's right.
And that's been a saying for a long time.
A long time.
Yeah.
And they will try to settle people down, because sometimes people are just mad.
Yeah.
And oftentimes there's a good reason for that. And the folks on the other end, especially if they have some experience, they'll talk them down, and then they can get things taken care of for them.
Yeah. So So call early, maybe do some yoga or Pilates beforehand, and be patient.
Yeah, that's a difference in our generation. I was
Yeah.
thinking drink a beer or two, but
Yeah, there you go.
you know, it's right. Just have something that
Yeah.
you can keep you busy while you're waiting. Now, that said, oftentimes you get through pretty quick. And so you may not have that issue, but don't give up. That's the main thing.
Well, I'm curious what your overall career was like at Social Security, because it sounds like 35 years. Is that right?
35 years.
What did you do prior to that?
Well, I was in the Air Force.
Okay.
I got out of the Air Force. I spent a year delivering sandwiches to bars and delicatessens.
Yeah.
At the time, it was before microwaves, but we had these reflector ovens. People would get sandwiches. And for once, I listened to my mom. She said, get a job with the government.
Yeah.
And I'm like, well, all right. I saw that job posted. Because I was in the military, I got a little extra edge and they hired me. It took a while, but it was the smartest thing. One of the smartest things I ever did.
Yeah.
I have to say, besides marrying my wife
Yeah.
of 54 years, it was probably a real good move. And I like working with people. I like helping people. And most people that work there do. And so
I'm very grateful for what you do. And I can tell you have a passion for it. And, and it's good that you're doing what you're doing. I'm glad that you didn't hang everything up and go fishing every day, because we need you more than the fish do. And the fish certainly don't need you because they don't want to be eaten.
Well, that is true.
Do you just catch and throw them back? Is that how you?
For the most part, because my wife doesn't like fish, even though she's a better fisherman than I am.
Yeah.
Or a fisherwoman, whatever you call these days. But pretty much catch and release is what we do.
Yeah. So the fish are thankful. I'm thankful. And I'm sure people who are just confounded by Social Security are thankful too, because as you said, as great and hardworking as the people at Social Security Administration are, they are not consultants. Right. So they're not there to walk you through every step of the way, which is something that your company, Premier Social Security Consulting, does. And I think that is unique. I have been doing this. This is my 17th year in the business. Hard to believe, but I have yet to encounter a consulting firm where that's all they do. So where can people find more about you and about Mark Kiner, who's your partner, and your company? And if someone needed your expertise, how would they connect with you?
Yeah, for folks who are looking maybe for some consultation, mypremierplan.com is our account. You can go online and do mypremierplan.com, and you can learn about Mark. You can learn about me and what we do. And basically, we will meet with folks. We get their Social Security statements. We prepare a written report for them, and then we go over that with them. And then they're stuck with me from that point forward, because if they have any questions, they can call. I'll help them file for benefits when it's time to do so. So that's what we do with folks for their Social Security benefits. If someone is an advisor, premiernsssa.com, you can find out about the program we have. It's an 8-hour class that we teach. We have a certificate program. It's an NSSA certificate program. And we teach you about Social Security. And again, we don't let you go and just turn you loose. Any questions people have from that point forward. And Mark and I get emails, phone calls every day from our advisors of the questions they get from their folks that they work with. So either one of those works fine.
All right. And again, I'm Ben Jones, host of Money Alchemist podcast. Brent Gargano could not be here today. He had some car trouble, so you just had me, but that it all worked out. I'm so thankful to have you here, Jim. And if you need any information on me, you can always find me on the website nwmgadvisors.com or on X, formerly known as Twitter. I'm at the Carrot Stick, and that's the KARAT Stick. Thank you. Securities offered through LPL Financial, member FINRA SIPC. Advisory services offered through National Wealth Management Group, LLC, a registered investment advisor and separate entity from LPL Financial, LLC. The opinions voiced in this material are for general information only and are not intended to provide specific advice or recommendations for any individual. All performance referenced is historical and is no guarantee of future results. Economic forecasts set forth may not develop as predicted, and there can be no guarantee that strategies promoted will be successful. This information is not intended as authoritative guidance or tax or legal advice. You should consult with your attorney or tax advisor for guidance on your specific situation. Brent Gargano is not affiliated with LPL Financial.